There was a blind man who was sitting on some steps by a busy sidewalk in a large city, and he had a hat with him and a sign that read, "I am blind, please help." And person after person just walked by him, didn't pay any attention to him, didn't toss any coins in his hat. And then a woman came by, and she, without saying anything, picked up the gentleman's sign, turned it around, wrote on the backside, and gave it back to him and left. Shortly after she did that, each person who passed by began to put money into his hat. Some of them even greeted him or wished him well. And later that afternoon, the woman came back, and the blind man could tell that it was her by the sound of her shoes. And so he said to her, "Are you the one who wrote something on my sign?" And she said, "Yes, I am." And he says, "Well, tell me what you wrote, because it made all the difference." And she said, "I really wrote what you were saying, but I just used different words. I wrote, 'Today is a beautiful day, and I can't see it.'" By using those words, it drew attention to the fact that not only were people beginning to feel for this man, to feel some compassion for him, to reach out to him, but probably each person also looked at themselves for a moment and said, "You know, there is beauty in this day. Do I see it?" Friends, there are those times when, for whatever reason, we can be blind to the beauty that is not only within us, but also around us. We can forget to see that goodness. That doesn't mean that life is always easy. We know we have those times of distress, we have those times of immense sorrow, we have those times of illness and loss, and yet each day God gives us to find a way to live that day in God's presence. Each one of us does have those areas of blindness, or that cloak that we need to cast aside. And we see that in today's gospel with the blind man Bartimaeus, who has his cloak around him, and his cloak would have been used like that other blind man's hat. It would have been that invitation for people to cast a few coins his way, to take notice of him. Well, Jesus comes along, and he gets excited and so calls out to him. But the people who are around him are probably used to him being there and finding him a nuisance. And so they tell him to be quiet. But he calls out all the louder to Jesus, "Son of David, have pity on me." And so Jesus says to come on over. And the man, even though he's blind, he throws aside his cloak, the thing that was probably most important to him. If there had been any money on that, he tossed that aside as well, and he sprang up and went to Jesus. And Jesus says to him, "What do you want?" And the blind man says, "Master, I want to see." And so Jesus heals his blindness and then sends him on his way. But unlike other stories of healing that we hear or read, some of those people, when they went on their way, they went back home, praising God, telling others of their good fortune. But this man decided that his way was the way of Jesus Christ. And so when Jesus sends him on his way, he follows Jesus, recognizing that as his new way of becoming that disciple of Jesus Christ. Each one of us, friends, has that cloak, has that item that we need to toss aside. Maybe it's a possession that we have that's a little too important to us. Maybe it's a feeling that we have about another person. Maybe it's our view of a people as a whole. We had that tragic news yesterday of the shooting of our brothers and sisters in the Jewish synagogue in Pittsburgh, where someone was unable or unwilling to throw aside their cloak of discrimination, their cloak of hatred, their cloak of the inability to look for and to find the fullness of God's presence in another human being. And so, friends, whatever our cloak is this day, let us have our prayer be the prayer of the blind man Bartimaeus, that if in nothing else we say to the Lord this day, "Lord, I want to see." I know often when I preach to myself more often than to you out there, and I have a prayer that I use each morning. It doesn't mean I'm successful at putting that prayer into practice, but I set it as the bar that I want to live by that day. And in many ways, it is a prayer of saying, "Lord, I want to see your goodness this day." And that prayer goes, "I awaken each day alive to its endless possibilities. I lead a full life, daring to take risks and explore new areas of interest. I find it easy to smile and to laugh. I look for and find the positive side of every situation. I keep my mind and my heart open so that I do not miss the sudden beauty of rainbows.